Well, I've really been enjoying Hatchet lately. Such a fast weapon, such a powerful weapon, so much mobility on it as well. It's honestly kind of a shame that I haven't spent more time playing this weapon because it is so much fun, and I feel like it's like kind of akin to Rapier in a way, where it plays a very similar high burst, high mobility playstyle. And on top of it, I feel like Hatchet is just so hard to kill, and that makes it perfect for any kind of 1vx, any kind of PvP build in general. You don't want to be easy to kill in PvP. And well, for this build, I paired it with one of my favorite off weapons, the Fire Staff. We've got it with Inferno for even more damage on the Hatchet. But all that synergy on this build is coming from the Cowl of Power. Thanks to the Inferno and thanks to not having a ton of mana sustain because it is a strength-based Fire Staff, we can really take advantage of the Cowl of Power on a build like this. You have lots of control over your mana, so you have the ability to just kind of use all of your cooldowns and very quickly put yourself within that Cowl of Power range. Just like that, you see I pop my abilities and bam, we've got the Cowl of Power up and we just start hacking at these guys. I'm really happy how this build came together. I feel like there's tons of synergy between the different items that this build uses. On top of it, I also have a bit of a build breakdown at the end of the video if you guys want to see exactly what I'm running. And there's a written guide linked down below if that's more your style. And of course, if you guys have an awesome clip that you want to see featured in the New World Top 5 Fights, you can email a link of that clip to Kristofer at pvpnewworld.com. I would love to see what you guys have. And now, without further ado, let's get into that PvP commentary. This first fight here was a capture the flag game that honestly was a really good capture the flag game just the whole game. It starts a little bit on the slow side, but as the clip goes on, you guys will see more and more out of this build. There you see that really snappy kill with the Hatchet. And then right away, I just get back to a little bit of cover. The big thing about playing any kind of a build, any kind of PvP when you're outnumbered, you want to be really aware of where your opponents are and what kind of cover you do and don't have. So here I managed to isolate the single player in this kind of corner here, and he wants to go for the shootout, and I oblige him. Unfortunately, he does a lot of damage with his spear, and he puts a lot of weaken on me, so I almost lose the shootout, but we still win because Hatchet is just generally overpowered in that situation. So it does a really good job. And then this other enemy Fire Staff player jumps on top of me, and we just exchange Fire Staff blows for a little bit. I get on top of him coming around the corner with the Hatchet. He switches to the Rapier, and I just keep hacking at him as much as possible. We're using the roll often with the Hatchet too. The big thing about Hatchet is that as long as you're landing light attacks and abilities, you have really good stamina sustain on your rolls in those close range kind of fights. So you're able to pretty much out dodge and out stam your opponents as long as you make sure you're landing those crits and trying to get those backstabs as often as possible. And I get up to the top here and I just do a ton of damage to that guy. He ends up going down to the Hatchet. This enemy player on like 1 health, he comes around the corner. We just hit him with the light attack. Down he goes as well. And just before they're able to cap their flag for the point, I steal the enemy flag and then run off to the side and just start throwing projectiles at the other guy. I drop the flag on purpose. Now, there's a reason I do this. Look how when I drop the flag, this guy stops to try to pick it up. That's exactly what I want. Anybody who stops on this flag, I'm going to just bomb the crap out of with my abilities. There you see, as soon as the enemy players get on there, I just start smashing them with my Hatchet. One enemy player goes down. The next enemy player goes down as he tries to retreat from the group, and I am just right in front of him. And then I go for the burnout through, get some good damage, and that does successfully stop the enemy team from being able to get the cap there. Now notice how in this engagement here, I don't have a lot of mana. I chugged the potion, but we had the option of just kind of not using the potion to make sure we had the Cowl of Power up. But it's a good thing we used the potion because I use all of my Fire Staff skills, and then we right away switch to the Hatchet. We get a little bit of damage in while the Cowl of Power is procced. And then unfortunately, there's just a few too many enemies, and I retreat down the side here. As soon as I'm out of their line of sight, I charge up that burnout. Whenever you can load up a move like that where they can't see you, you can catch them by surprise with the speed at the end of it. And the whole point of going around the corners just to kind of obscure their vision of you as often as you can. And now we see this guy here very low on health. We hit him with the fireball, go into the incinerate. Down he goes. Cowl of Power with the big proc there again. And yeah, I like the Cowl of Power too with this Fire Staff because it actually makes the Inferno Fire Staff hit pretty hard as well. And I feel like with a normal Fire Staff build, because you get the mana back on crit, you have a really hard time playing a build like this. So there's a lot of merits to this item. Honestly, I feel like it's kind of the perfect item for Inferno plus a strength weapon of choice. Now, this enemy bow rapier player, he comes back to fight again. This guy, he wants me dead, let's be honest. He's chasing me down this whole map, but we're just getting the better of him every single exchange. And here we pop the berserk, we get in front of him. I try to hit him with the light attacks. He's just out of range. Finally, I connect with the light attack. We get some big damage. There's the fireball. Down he goes, a 1600 fireball. Like, this man is running tons of fire resist, and we're still cutting through him like butter. Now, if you notice in the gameplay here, I actually have the fire damage split on my hatchet, and in the video you can kind of see that the damage is sometimes good and sometimes it's not good. Honestly, you want to go with opal on the hatchet. In the build breakdown, I talk about that and I show you guys the build with the opal instead of the fire gem split. So definitely something worth keeping in mind. When you watch the footage here, the hatchet could be hitting a little bit harder than it is. And yeah, I just keep hacking on these guys. I love it. This is the cowl of power at its absolute finest. See how my mana is just drained and I can stay so aggressive with the hatchet and just keep constantly proccing that cowl of power. He hits me with the counter stun here and he goes for the second stun, but I know the attack from the range players coming in and that pops me out of the stun. So I'm able to very quickly put in a couple light attacks to finish that guy off. And there's that cheeky fireball as this guy comes around the corner to try to chase me down. Yeah. I feel like the healing power is what's really surprising people on this build too. It's got a lot of staying power. It's got a lot of ability to just keep fighting, especially low health comebacks. The hatchet is so good at that. Here we go. More enemy players coming into the fray. We've got very low mana, which is perfect for the cowl of power. We go up top. We start swinging at these guys. I don't think we got the cowl proc, unfortunately, before we were able to get anything there. But there we go. The burnout through. We got the cowl of power back into play, and I chugged the mana potion. Never mind. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have chugged the mana potion there because we would have had the cowl up for that little bit of engagement. That's okay. The enemy players are slowly charging towards me. They all come towards the end here, and I just drop off the edge, and I go inside the corridor and load up the burnout to go through anybody who chases me. One enemy player ended up following me down there, and I like that incinerate, man. The Void Gauntlet player comes in. We just troll him a little bit with the incinerate. There's the hatchet throw to break a little bit of distance. We just pop our heal again. Ooh, take nasty damage from the ranger, but that's okay. That's the end of the game. That was a crazy good capture the flag game for me, just being kind of green on this build, to be honest. I haven't played Hatchet a lot, and I feel like there's a lot that I need to learn and a lot that I need to change about my playstyle, especially learning to land those partially charged heavy attacks for that empower bonus. It's something that I didn't do in the footage because I didn't actually have that perk in the footage, but when I play more Hatchet in the future, that's definitely something I want to keep in mind. That partially charged heavy is very fast, and it has actually pretty decent reach too. Now, moving on to the OPR clip here. The enemy players jumped on top of me. I go outside. One guy ends up following me out, and I pick up the kill on him. Absolutely perfect. That's exactly what you want to do. Try to split your opponents up. Just break it down into a little bit of a different fight. And now we jump on top of the other player there, and I actually have the ghost here helping me out. And I just keep throwing the fire staff stuff down on him. And there's the burnout to go through. We got the cowl of power procced. I go for the hatchet, and I get big damage on the light attack into the Raging Torrent. Cancel there. Something to note about the Raging Torrent ability and just Hatchet in general is that when you use a light attack before an ability, you can cancel it really quickly with an ability and even a dodge roll afterwards. So if you want to do big damage with the Hatchet, I think something that you want to keep in mind is trying to land as many light attacks before those abilities as possible, just kind of weaving those moves in there for that additional burst damage. And as more enemies kind of converge on the location here, I head back inside. I try to get some damage with my Hatchet there. Unfortunately, I end up missing everybody with my torrent, and these guys chase me, or one player ends up chasing me up the top there. I go for the burnout to go through the enemy group like that, and then I just keep feeding some fire staff damage into them, trying to just get some targets to chase me along the side. I know when they're in the clump like that and they have a healer, it's very hard to do anything really effective. And there we go. We managed to get one player to peel off to the side. There you see that big heavy attack backdraft explosion on him. That was like 5k damage plus on that backdraft. And then we just keep attacking the enemy spear player here. I hit him with the immobilize from my throwing hatchet, and we just feed him that damage. Down he goes. Two more enemy players jump on top of me here. I go for the incinerate as kind of a defensive incinerate, They do not go or jump on top of me aggressively. I was expecting the Sword and Shield Hatchet player to do that. Instead, he goes around the corner, jumps from up top, but that's okay. We've got the distance throw in order to break that distance from him and just keep ourselves in a safe position. And those two decide not to chase me and they go back inside. So I just hack at the door here until eventually I get inside as well. And then we just very quickly jump on top of a low health player there. We kill him. And then I get up top here and I start attacking the healers. This is exactly who we need to go after in these kinds of fights. The healers are going to make it very hard for pretty much anybody on the enemy team to die. So if we can just disrupt them, even if we don't kill them, if we can just distract them by having them focus on healing themselves instead of their friendlies, it gives our friendlies a chance to get those kills a little bit easier. And I jump back down here. Again, we're on top of the enemy healer. And I love how rapid of an attack Hatchet is. Now, against this opponent here, you can see that we would be much better off if we didn't have the fire damage split. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I feel like fire damage split was a mistake to try, but we still got good gameplay nonetheless, even with the Hatchet damage a little bit on the lower side because of it. So I think that speaks to the build being a pretty solid build all around. Even when we have something that's not perfect in it, it still performs really well. All right, let's take a look at that build. Starting off with the attribute points. This is a strength build because we're running Inferno. It will scale from strength. So we've got 350 strength, 100 dex. You can see there's a little bit of focus on Hatchet damage over the Inferno staff damage. That being said, the 100 dex is still going to give some percent damage increase to Inferno. So it's not like we totally miss out by going for the dex there. And then 200 con. You don't need to run 200 con on a build like this. You could run more or even less if you want. It's totally up to the user. I really like 200 con because I feel like for a very melee focused build, especially since Inferno has very melee focused skills, this additional health comes in super handy for staying alive, especially Hatchet being super trolly at staying alive. Having the additional health just makes that even better. So yeah, you have a bit of flexibility here, but a very simple attribute tree for the most part. Now, taking a look at the weapon mastery side of things, on the Hatchet, we've got Berserk, we've got Raging Torrent, and we have got Social Distance Throw. All of these skills are going to give you access to a haste, which is huge, and these hastes will stack together. So if you use something like Berserk and then hit an attack with Raging Torrent, bam, you're sitting at a 28% haste just like that. Now, something also to mention is that we didn't take the last point in Raging Torrent simply because I'm usually canceling this skill early, or my opponent is already rolled out of the way by the time I get to the last swing. So most of the time you're not landing that last swing anyway, and that's why I took that point out of there, just to favor putting as many passives as I could in here. The really important one, I think, is Relentless Fury for that 15% additional Empower. That plus Berserk puts this build at Empower cap fairly easily, which is really nice. And then, of course, on the right side here, we have some crit passives, but some big stamina sustained passives as well, which is really good for that melee fighting. And then I do like Frenzied Purge, just for that kind of purge whenever you hit an opponent while your health is really low. Especially with Defy Death, it gives you the opportunity to be very aggressive at low health and come out on top in those kinds of engagements. Now, taking a look at the Fire Staff tree, you guys have seen this tree from me many, many times. It is a fairly close-range focused Fire Staff tree. We, of course, have Backdraft. When you're playing a strength-based Fire Staff with Inferno, the damage over time from the burn does not scale from strength. That still scales from intelligence. So being able to turn those dots that are very weak into a powerful burst through Backdraft is super valuable. It kind of negates the fact that those dots kind of suck, so that's really good. And then, of course, no points for Incinerate, simply because the perks here aren't bad or anything, but I favored going for more of the damage perks that we can get from Fire Staff and the additional burns that we can get, instead of going for that Weaken and a little bit of Empower if you hit a target with it. And then for Fireball, we didn't take the last perk here either because we don't want the mana sustain. A big thing about this build is having as little mana sustain as possible. Because we're using the Cowl of Power, you want to keep your mana on the low side. So this perk tree, I think, actually really does a good job with that kind of a build because we have absolutely nothing in mana sustain in this tree. Now, let's take a look at the equipment that we're running on this build. Starting off with the weapon, I've got the Fire of Battle. This is a very easy 725 hatchet to get your hands on. If you do the Ifrit boss, or world boss, I guess, he has a chance of dropping this. So next time Ifrit is in rotation, if you guys want to pick this axe up, I would highly recommend that you do. Vicious Keen Berserk is really nice. Lifestealing is nice, don't get me wrong. It makes it really good for brawling, but I would prefer another offensive perk here like Penetrating Backstab. And then, of course, for the gem, we've got the Arboreal Gambit here. Mostly, we wanted the Gambit for that additional damage. I tried going for the Fire Gem split, and it was not as good as I hoped it would be. It actually performed kind of on the bad side. So back to the Opal I went, and then I went for the Nature Dot simply because we have the Fire Dot on the Fire Staff already. So being able to stack both of those damage over times, if we do a quick like Fireball switch to Hatchet and start hacking at them, it's a little bit more damage for that little burst window. We could go for Fire Dot here if you wanted, and that will get a little bit more damage boost from the Rune Glass gems and stuff like that. So it's up to you, but yeah, it's really up to you. And then for the Inferno, I have gone with Empowering Fireball as my perk of choice for that weapon. You could go with a different perk here if you want, but I really like Empowering Fireball for that burst that it gives. And then we've got Ignited Gambit on here, so the same kind of deal. We've got the Opal, but this time the Fire Dot on the Fire Staff. Now, taking a look at the armor, the first piece here is the Cowl of Power. I've put Shirking Heels on this guy because you guys know I love Shirking Heels. We're running 200 con as well, so there's going to be a lot of Shirking Heels on this build. But this item, if you hit an enemy while your mana is below 50%, you gain 4 seconds of 25% increased damage on a 10-second cooldown. This is exactly why we want to keep that mana as low as possible on this build, so we can proc the Cowl of Power as often as we want. Now, this additional damage boost does not count as Empower either, so it stacks with your Empower, which is really nice. I believe it just counts as base damage increase, so a very, very good item for additional burst damage, especially since what we can do is go in with the Fire Staff, blow all our cooldowns, and then we're sitting at about 40% mana, switch to the Hatchet, and just start hacking at them with that big damage. And then for the rest of the gear here, of course, the Derricks, we've got Vital Synergy on here, Shirking Heels and Refreshing. Shirking Heels, Refreshing, Hasted Vigor, Shirking Heels, Refreshing, and Shirking Energy, Shirking Heels, Refreshing, and another Hasted Vigor. So you don't need 2 Hasted Vigor on this build. Honestly, one of these Hasted Vigor is a flex spot for you. You can put whatever perk you want here, be it another weapon perk or even something like Freedom, because we don't have Freedom on this build at all. So yeah, that's kind of up to the user what you want to do, but you do definitely want to have one of each of these kind of unique perks on each of my armor pieces here. And then for the jewelry on the Gorgon's Amulet, we got Stamina Recovery, Divine, and Health. I did mention in the previous version of this build that I might go for the Shirking Empower here. No, the Fire Staff is sitting at 55% Empower. The Hatchet is sitting at 52% Empower, fully buffed. We don't need more Empower. If you're worried about stuff like Weaken or the uptime on all your Empowers, you could go for the Shirking Empower here, but for real, honestly, you don't need it. Stamina Recovery is probably going to give your build a lot more in the long run. And then for the ring, I've got Fire Damage, Healing Breeze, and Hardy. We don't have slash damage here. The Hatchet can hit that Empower cap without it. The Fire Staff needs the fire damage to hit the Empower cap. So, yep. And then for the Endless Thirst, or the earring, we've got Endless Thirst. This is just the best healing earring right now for any kind of solo PvP build. It makes your potions really powerful, and as long as you're switching between 2 different potions, you get no negative drawbacks from this item. The cooldown is not increased by 25%, so very, very strong. And then I went with Regenerating as the perk on here, simply to add a little bit more healing power to this item. Then, of course, for the ultimate, I've got Stone Form. Honestly, you can do whatever you want with this one. You don't have to use Stone Form, but I really like Stone Form in PvP because it is essentially a stun break and a heal. And then, of course, use the best healing potions and stuff that you can. Now, something I want to mention is about the mana sustain on this build. You can use the Energizing Hearty Meal, but honestly, you can also not use it. It really depends on how you feel your mana sustain is going with the build. If you feel like you have too much mana and you're not getting enough procs with that Cowl of Power, drop the Hearty Meal and see if that works a little bit better. I would recommend that you run mana potions with this build, though, regardless of how you choose to do it. And then, of course, a quick look at the resists here, just kind of even across the board with a focus on fire resistance. And that is the build, guys. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time.